is translated in a number of ways in English. It is translated as faithfulness. It is translated as love. It is translated as mercy. It is translated as steadfast love. It is translated as loving kindness. It is translated as kindness. This word chesed is translated in so many different ways. Faithfulness, love, mercy, steadfast love, loving kindness shows that this word chesed cannot capture the richness of the word chesed because it includes all this. And so it includes God's faithfulness, His love, His mercy, His steadfast love, His loving kindness. The word chesed is that rich. And Naomi trusted in God's chesed. In Isaiah 54:10 speaks about, for the mountains may depart and the hills be removed, but my steadfast love shall not depart from you. This steadfast love is the chesed. Here, what is it said about the chesed? God's chesed? It will never depart from you. God's chesed is something which is never going to depart from you. His love, His faithfulness, His mercy, His loving kindness, all that is included, it says it is never going to depart from you. Lamentations 3:22-23 says, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Once again, the steadfast love of God is God's chesed. മലയാളത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞാൽ നീ മുടിഞ്ഞു പോകാതിരിക്കേണ്ടി യഹോവയുടെ ദയ ആകുന്നു. God's chesed, it never ceases. So that we are not consumed because of God's chesed. It's not only mercy, it is His love, His faithfulness, His steadfastness, everything. We are not consumed. His chesed never ceases. And so, chesed is God's unshakable love. It is a love that never departs from us. It's faithful even when we are faithless. It is something new every morning. And that was what Naomi leaned on to. She trusted. Her anchor was on God's chesed. No matter what has happened to me, His love is not going to depart from me. He is faithful even though I'm not faithful. And His chesed is new every morning. And that was her anchor. And so, because her anchor was on chesed, she was able to get up. Because her anchor was on chesed, God's chesed, she was able to hold the rope and continue the journey of fulfilling God's plan for her life. And so, like Naomi, in the midst of our Saturdays, where should be our anchor? On God's chesed. God's chesed, which is unshakable, unchanging. God's chesed, which never departs from us. God's chesed, which is always faithful, even when we are not faithful. God's chesed, which is new every morning. And so, we see that when Lois Thorberg, when she talked about, she tried to explain the meaning of chesed. She said, chesed is not just a feeling, but an action. And she goes on to say, she tries to define this chesed as it intervenes on behalf of loved ones to come to their rescue. So God's chesed is not just a feeling, it is an action. It comes to your rescue. His kindness, His steadfast love, His mercy, His faithfulness is not just His feeling, but it comes to you to rescue you. And so Naomi's anchor was on God's chesed. She journeyed, or she navigated her Saturdays holding on to God's chesed, that He is faithful. His love has never not departed from her. And she gets up, holds on to the cord, and continues her journey for God's plan for her life. If we look at the broad picture of Ruth, the broad picture of Ruth, we see that even before Naomi had departed or got up, God had already arranged. God had already arranged a Boaz. Decades before, there was already a Boaz. Even before husband died, there were decades before, God had already arranged a Boaz. And we read that in Ruth 122. Ruth 122 we read, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. A barley harvest was already ready for them. It's already ready. God had already prepared a barley harvest for them. God had not only prepared a barley harvest for Naomi, God also had arranged a Ruth. Ruth, who would be with her, who would be there to care for her, who would be equivalent to 7 sons. And God had already planned this. This was on her way. But if Naomi had not got up and sat there in despair, just imagine if Naomi had not got up and sat there in despair, she wouldn't have experienced God's plan for her life. Her life wouldn't have been restored. And so, we are called to have hope because God already has a plan for us. His plan is already set. We are only called to hold on to His rope and continue our journey. And when we hold on to His rope and continue the journey, His plan will be fulfilled. And that's what we learned from Naomi. We will all have our Saturdays in our life. If one Saturday is over, the next Saturday will arrive. After that will somehow get over, the next Saturday. Sometimes the Saturdays will take a week. Sometimes it will take months. Sometimes the Saturdays will get years together. But no matter how long your Saturdays are, it is said if the tree is cut down and even if the roots dry, it decays, but with the scent of water, it will burst forth. And so there is always a hope for us. What is required on our Saturdays? We have to, and we have to hold on to the rope. What rope? That God is holding for us and trusting in what? In His Chesed. Chesed includes everything. His faithfulness, His mercy, His loving kindness. And this Chesed is something which is unshakable, which never departs. And when Naomi did that, God's dream for her life was restored. And so hope is already in motion. There is hope there already in motion. But then we have to do our part. What is our part? To get up, hold on to Him, and trust in His Chesed. And so we saw Saturdays of our life, there's a choice. Choice, we can despair. But God's plan can never happen in our life if we choose to despair. It's only when we are firm and secure and hope, trust in His Chesed, can God's plan for our life will be fulfilled. Another option we have on our Saturdays is we can deny. Denial. What is denial? Act as though nothing happened. When troubles come, be it big, huge setbacks like losing a loved ones, it could be smaller ones, small disappointments, smaller hurts. Somebody has said something. All this cause pain. Any setbacks, any problems create pain in us. And if we act as though nothing happened, put a smiling face and keep ourselves busy, pain doesn't go away. If we keep denying and keep ourselves busy doing our activities, the pain is not processed. The pain continues to stay there. And the pain continues to stay there. It comes out of us in various other forms. It was Richard Rohr who said, pain that doesn't get transformed gets transmitted. If you don't transform your faith, you will always transmit it. Someone else has to suffer because I don't know how to suffer. When you don't process your pain, you just dump it inside, suppress it, and go about doing your daily activities. Your pain is not processed. You are not healed. And since you are not healed, this pain which is inside will come out. It will come out of you as in different forms. It could come as anxiety, it could come as anger, it could come as depression, it could come in various forms. If this pain is not processed, it will come out in different forms, and it's going to impact not only you, but also those around you. And so the pain has to be processed. Any pain. During our life's journey, any setbacks, small setbacks, bigger setbacks, even a small word which somebody has said, if it creates a pain within you, that pain has to be processed. If the pain is not processed, you are not healed. And if you are not healed, there is no restoration for you. The pain has to be processed. How do you process that pain? In Jeremiah, we read about that the people of Israelites, they were attacked by the Babylonians. And they were taken as exile to Babylon. Their house was destroyed. Many of their family members got killed. And now they are in exile. And while they were in exile, God tells Jeremiah 9:17, God tells Jeremiah, this is what the Lord God Almighty says. Consider now, call for the wailing woman to come, send for the most skillful of them. Call for the wailing woman to come, send for the most skillful of them. നിങ്ങൾ വിലാപകാർത്തികളെ വിളിച്ച് വരുത്തുവിൻ. Call for the wailing woman. The wailing woman in their time was skilled women, skilled in mourning. They were skillful people who knew how to mourn, and they helped people how to mourn. And so these people who had come from Israel, they were completely devastated. They had lost, some of them had lost their families, some of them have lost their children, some of them lost their homes, and they were completely devastated. And when we face such huge traumas, sometimes we are not able to become numb. We are not able to process the pain. And so God is telling Jeremiah, call for the wailing woman to come, send for the most skillful men. Why? To help them to process their pain. Call for the wailing woman to come, send for the most skillful men. Why? And what did this wailing woman do? Let them come quickly, wail over us till our eyes overflow with tears and water streams from our eyelids. God tells to call the wailing woman so that they could come and help them to cry. Help them to cry. We are called to cry. We are not called to remain numb and or accept denial. When we are hurt, we are not called to suppress it. We are called to cry out. When you are hurt, whether it's big or small, if you need healing for your pain, we need to cry. We need to weep. just by suppressing it and getting involved in certain activities in order to forget it. Because sometimes we are scared. We are scared to open up. We are scared because it causes you pain. And so you are scared to open up. But if you don't open up and deal with that pain will cause other problems not only for you, but for others. And so the Bible also reminds us, when we are hurt, we are called to weep. Deal with our pain. When we are dealing with our pain, we are making a conscious attempt to look into our pain. If you need healing, you need to weep. Don't ignore your pain. Don't deny it as though nothing has happened. Be it big or be it small. The Bible tells us we are called to weep. If you need a Sunday, if you need a healing, if you need a restoration, the first step is you need to weep. And Naomi wept. She grieved. We'll go into that later. And what did this weeping woman do? How did they help? How did they help this woman of Judah mourn? We read in verse 19. These weeping women, they're crying out. The sound of the wailing is heard from Zion. How ruined we are. How great is our shame. We must leave our land because our houses are in ruins. What are these wailing women doing? They are naming their pain. They are naming their losses. They are pointing out to the losses. How ruined we are. How devastated we are. What a shame. What is the shame? What is their shame? They are pointing it out. Your houses are destroyed. Your people are destroyed. Your temple is in smoke. What a shame. These wailing women, what were they doing? They are pointing out to their losses. What is causing them pain? Name your pains. The next verse it says, verse 21 it says, once again they are naming it. Death has climbed in through our windows and has entered our fortresses. It has removed the children from the streets and the young men from public squares. Once again they are naming, death has entered. Death has not only entered, it has destroyed their children. A place where the children used to once play now is empty. Their children are lost. Not only the children, the young men who used to fill the public squares are now empty. The men are dead. The young children are dead. What are they doing? They are naming their pain. And though when they're naming their pain, when you grieve, if you have to process the pain, you need to name what is causing you pain. You have to name your pain. Many a times we just cry, but we do not know why we are crying. Find out why are you crying. Name your pain. Part of grieving process is we are called to name your pain. Kenneth Sanderford, he says, a therapist, he said, you can't heal what you can't name. And so part of the grieving process is not just merely crying. You have to name your pain. Why are you crying? What's the reason? What is the cause of the pain? And that's what we see Naomi had done. She grieved. And before going to that, and Jeremiah 9:20, God is telling, God is telling to us. What is telling us? Now you women, hear the word of the Lord. Open your ears to the word of his mouth. And what is he telling us? Teach your daughters how to wail. Teach one another to lament. We can grow as a community. We can be healed as a community only when we know how to wail. When you teach your daughters how to wail, and when you teach each other, what we do? We try to cover up. And even if we are scared to open up, and even if somebody opens up, we are scared to hear. We don't know what to say. But if we need healing, the Bible says we need to wail. We need to wail. We not only need to wail, weep, but also we need to name our pain. What is it that is causing me pain? Why am I crying? What is the reason for my cry? And we see that in Naomi's life. Naomi, she grieved. We read that when she reached Bethlehem. When she reached Bethlehem, it is said, so the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. And then they arrived in Bethlehem. The whole town was stirred because of them. And the woman exclaimed, can this be Naomi? And Naomi says, don't call me Naomi, she told them. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. And so she's telling, don't call me Naomi, call me. What do you mean by Mara? Is it good to feel bitter? The Bible were never used bitter all throughout the Old Testament. The word bitter was used for grieving. We read in 2 Kings 4:27. Talks about when she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man God said, leave her alone. She is in bitter distress. What is she? She is grieving because of the loss of her son. 1 Samuel 1:18 talks about Hannah. It said, in her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. What is she doing? Is this bitter good? Yeah, she's praying. Yes, that bitterness was praying. She was praying in pain. She was grieving. The words used all here is Mara only. The Hebrew word used is Mara. She was weeping Mara. Even that widow who lost her son, she was weeping. The word used there is Mara, weeping bitterly. Esther 4:1 talks about Mordecai. Esther 4:1 talks about Mordecai, saying, when Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. Once again, the word used there is Mara. What is he doing? He's weeping. He's grieving. Jeremiah 13:17. Jeremiah is saying, my eyes will weep bitterly, overflowing with tears, because the Lord's flock will be taken captive. Jeremiah is also weeping bitterly. Mara. There is bitterness within them. They are weeping. It's not bitterly, the English word is bitterly, but the Hebrew word was used is Mara, bitterness. She was weeping. The word bitter, Mara, all throughout the Old Testament, whenever it was used for grief. And so Naomi is saying, call me Mara, because I'm grieving. I have lost my son. I have lost my husband. I have lost my two sons. She is weeping bitterly. And so she is telling, call me Mara. My soul is in anguish. I'm grieving. She's expressing her grief. And then she goes on to say, what does she go on to say? I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. What is she doing here? What is she doing here? She is naming her pain. What is causing her deep pain? She's naming it. I was full, but now I am empty. That's why she is grieving. She has lost the meaning and purpose of her life. She's naming her grief. She not only grieves, but she is naming the grief. And then we see all throughout this verse, she uses the word God. How many times the word God? It's not God. How many times the word God is used here in this verse? All these 2 verses. How many? 2, 3, 4? Yo, 2 o'clock I. Huh? 4 times, 4 times. Yes, it is 4 times. Almighty, Lord, Lord, Almighty. In these 2 verses, 4 times, yes, 4 times. She's using the word God, Lord, Almighty. And what else she's saying? The Almighty has made my life very bitter. Why call me know me? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Is it right or wrong to say that? When you're grieving, it's okay because you are telling what is in your heart. Even Jesus said, what did he say on the cross? Why did you forsake me? My Lord, why did you forsake me? If you look into the Psalms, there are 2 Psalms. Psalms are all full of laments. They talk about all their problems. They pour out their problems. But all the Psalms end in hope, praising the Lord. But there are 2 Psalms in the Bible which ends in darkness, begins with darkness, and also ends in darkness. You know which are the 2 Psalms? It's Psalms 88 and Psalms 39. There is no hope. It begins in darkness, and Psalms 88, the last line is, darkness is my friend. And I used to always wonder, why this psalm is there in the Bible if there is no hope? Both the psalms end in darkness. It begins with darkness and end with darkness. And I've always thought, why? Because most of the psalms, they end with hope, they end with praising God. But these 2 psalms end with darkness. And then I read a commentary by Derek Kidner. And he said, it's okay to grieve. It's okay to say all this. The very reason that is in the Bible shows that it's okay with God to grieve like this. God didn't say, why this is in the Bible, I don't want it, get it out. No, it's there in the Bible. Why is it there in the Bible? Because it's okay for God. God is saying, I'm a God of grace. It's not I'm a God, your God only when you say good things to me. I'm a God even when you are toxic things, I'm still your God. I understand. In your desperation, you will all talk all this. I understand that. So grieving is a process where we may talk out. It's okay. The Bible permits it. But you are called to grieve. Don't deny. Don't suppress it. But grieve. How you grieve? Weep. Weep bitterly. Not only weep. Name your grief. And weep bitterly before God. When you weep bitterly, there will be healing. If you do not weep, this will come out in different forms. And Naomi not only had a God before whom she could weep, she also had the woman of Bethlehem before she could open up and weep. And so, when she grieved, what did the woman say? What did the woman of Bethlehem say? Did they say that way? Did they judge Naomi? No, they just remained silent. When somebody grieves, we cannot do anything. We cannot fix their problems. But we can just remain, listen to them, be with them. That's all that is needed. And when that happens, when we have sisters which help us to grieve, when we have a God who helps us to grieve, healing happens. And when there is healing, there is restoration. And that's what we learn in the life of Naomi. Naomi, she grieved. And grieving is part of hope. There are some people say, you have hope, why are you grieving? No, grieving is part of hope. If you have hope, that doesn't mean that you should not cry. You are crying because you have to deal with the pain. It's not because you don't have hope. You have hope of healing. But then you need to grieve if you need healing in your life. And that's what we learn from Naomi. Naomi navigated the Saturdays of her life. Hope and grieving in hope. And so the restoration happened. What did she do? What did Naomi do on a Saturday? Saturdays of her life, what did Naomi do? Her hope firm and secure. Not a wishy-washy hope, but a hope that was firm and secure. She acted. She got up. She did not lie there in despair, waiting for hope to come. She acted. She got up. She held on to the rope. She not only held on to the rope because she trusted in God's Chesed. She trusted in God's Chesed. She not only trusted in God, as part of the grieving, she also grieved. She named her pain. And so that brought about healing. So in the Saturdays of our lives, we are called to hope. When you hope, that doesn't mean you're not supposed to cry. We are to cry and name our pain before God. If you don't have any friends or sisters before to cry, cry before God. That's more than enough. Cry and name your pain. Express your feelings. It doesn't matter to God. But if you want healing, you are to cry out. You cry out and then get up. Trusting that God's Chesed has not left you. God's Chesed is faithful and He will rescue you. And go about doing what is required of you. And you will find restoration. I don't know what happened. Okay. Thank you.